Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. As I started to prepare for today's session on time management, I actually went out and spoke to several sales professionals. And I've got to tell you, I quickly realized that all of us agree that organizing and prioritizing our activities is simply common sense. We all know we have to do it. But what stood out to me was top performers are always planning their activities, whether it's on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis, because they want to monetize their actions. They want to achieve their annual goal. And they're super focused on getting more done in less time. It's not like someone gets more time than another person, but how we use that time is critical. So my ask today, guys, as you go through the approaches and the techniques that we're going to review, think about applying one of them to help your 2019 performance goals. Start with one. Make that commitment. Could someone advance the slides, please? There we go. So, you can follow us on social media. Please feel free to do so and engage with us. We'd love to hear your feedback on this session, as well as if you have any ideas for upcoming sessions, topics that you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. So please, we'd love to hear from you. I love this cartoon, guys. It's a cute little cartoon. And if you think about it, these days, everything is called a priority. But in reality, not all priorities are created equally. So no matter what your role is, how you proactively plan to spend your time, whether it's weekly, monthly, or quarterly, has a very direct impact on your overall success and your mindset. The truth is, a plan creates a deeper sense of purpose, and there's no better time to create a plan than at the beginning of the year. Imagine if you started to monetize your time against all your activities that you did this week. If you think about your activities, did they cost you money? Were they keeping you away from your goals? Or did they actually make you money? Did you do activities this week that drove you closer to achieving your goal? This is a simple way to start prioritizing what are my top priorities and to think about where should you spend your time. Let me build out this slide for us. So let's review our objectives today. I'm going to share 6 techniques that if you commit to using them, I guarantee they're going to make you more productive this year. We're going to talk about what have we been doing with our time. 3 things specifically. Are we driving activities that directly link to our goals? Are the right priorities in place with measurable outcomes on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis? And how can we be more proactive to get more done in less time? I've spoken with a lot of people over the last couple of weeks preparing for this webinar. We all feel to a certain degree that we're victims of our calendar. And I believe there are specific steps that we can take to be more proactive and maintain greater control of our calendar. Let's start things off, Julie, if you don't mind. Let's take a poll now and let's start to understand what's getting in the way.
Excellent. I'm launching a poll right now for all of you to kind of pick and choose what gets in the way of managing time well. And I see that we've got a bunch of responses. Let's see how we keep voting, and I'll share the results. Let's give it another couple of seconds to vote. Sometimes it's hard to pick the other, to pick a single issue. For those of you that selected other, it'd be great if you shared with us what the other was. And we'll get some ideas from that. All right, we're close to everybody voting. I am going to go ahead and close this poll. Thank you, and share the results for you.
Great. Thanks, Julie, for doing that. So if we start to look at the results, guys, we see that at the top, distractions tends to be the number one result. And those distractions are typically from emails or interruptions throughout the days. We also see there's a close tie for second between lack of organization, in other words, actually organizing our activities, priorities, and goals, and too much on non-selling activities, or what I sometimes like to call internal admin. And that's interesting, right? We're all preoccupied with unread emails. We believe that they need our attention right away. If we don't look at that unread email, we might upset a customer, or our manager might be waiting for information. But here's a suggestion I have for you. Think about this. If you can, schedule reoccurring 30 to 45-minute time slots in your calendar to reply to emails. In other words, 2 times a day for 30 to 45 minutes, you're not just going to open up your emails, scan them, and get to them later on. You're actually going to open them and reply to them. This way, you're very efficient in your time management of your email. The reality is, unread emails can wait. If you really have an emergency, someone's going to call you, text you, or figure out a way to get a hold of you. And if you have the strength, shut down your email to avoid distractions during your prime selling time. Don't let email get in the way. The truth is, distractions are always going to take longer than we expect to complete. How many times have you opened up that email and said, oh, this is quick, I'll get to this right away, I can do this in 10 minutes. An hour later, you're still on it. So we have to tackle this and handle this. And we're going to talk about it in the next several minutes.
That's such a key point, Tony, and it requires such discipline to not let your inbox dictate your activities, but to let your goals and objectives dictate your activities. And I learned a long time ago that when I let my inbox and email dictate my day, I'm letting someone else manage my time as opposed to proactively managing my time myself.
Great point. Yeah, we're at the mercy of being a taskmaster. And when we're a taskmaster, we're not controlling our day. So it's a great point, Julie. So let's talk about our reality, right? Time is our most valuable resource. And honestly, it's not like we can go back to our manager and ask for more time at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter. How many times have you had a forecasted deal and gone back to your manager and said, I ran out of time? We're all guilty of it, right? The average employee works about 1,800 hours a year. That's certainly plenty of time as we begin 2019. But we also know there's so many time wasters that surround us. Just think about our reality. We sit in front of technology all day long, whether you're on a tablet, a laptop, on your cell phone. There's very little that goes on in the world today that you don't get notified of instantly that causes a distraction. Even if it's momentarily, they all add up at the end of the day. As employees, we know there will be distractions and disruptions. I call them fire drills, and they happen every day. I'm not sure if you've ever had this happen to you, but from time to time, your manager will come in and they'll say, I need the forecast updated today. Why? Because someone distracted and got a disruption in their day. And now your manager's coming to you. Customers will have requests that they need to talk to you about right away. We simply can't eliminate distractions. They're going to happen, and we have to manage them appropriately. But we know we can try to anticipate them at times and be prepared so that through time management, we can proactively manage our time and plan to handle fire drills as part of our daily activity. It won't throw us off our game because we'll have planned for it. Distractions always take longer than we expect for them to complete. And if I just go back for a moment to my example of the forecast from the manager, if you think about that request, if we take the time to collect the right information and understand from our manager, hey, you need an updated forecast today? Is it for the month? Is it for the quarter? Is it for a particular product group? Is it for our growth? Is it for our retention? Too many times we react impulsively to the distraction, and we end up doing what we think is right, only to find out we need to go redo it again, or there was more details required. So we need to make sure we really understand it completely so that we can manage it accordingly. Now let's talk about the 6 ways to control a crazy day. And I'm just going to build out this slide now for us. So when we think about the 6 techniques, the first technique is actually setting your goals. How do we know we're spending time on the right things and the right activities if we're not accomplishing towards a goal, towards a specific personal goal? So we're going to talk about making sure that we begin with your goals and back that into what activities are required to meet these specific goals. And are we allocating enough time to achieve them? We're going to talk about that in more detail. We then categorize our activities from the goal setting exercise, and we create what we call the master time allocation, or the MTA. And a sample copy of this is available for your review. It's also an editable template, so you can edit it to your circumstances. Not everyone's categories are the same, obviously. We're going to talk about a couple of strategies to deal with interruptions more effectively. Now, we can't always manage this. I think everyone acknowledges that. But we can allocate time to deal with it in our day so that when it happens, we still maintain control. We'll also talk about having clear sales objectives for all our client interactions and how we can maximize these vital activities. For most of us, our number one job is to retain and grow our existing clients or acquire new clients. And we need to make sure we're constantly focused on these vital activities of retention and growth. And the last one, which is the biggest time waster, is that we spend way too much time with people who are willing to meet with us, but they'll never buy from us. We have to commit to requalifying prospects regularly so that we can avoid wasting time. And this is a discipline that everyone claims to have mastered, but when you actually take the time to understand the importance of requalifying your prospects throughout your entire sales cycle, I hope you get some takeaways from that, because I found it to be really eye-opening. So let's start by talking about SMART. And this isn't new, by the way. This has been around for a long time. This concept of having SMART goals to set strategies. And this is the right time to do it at the beginning of the year as we're all getting prepared to attend sales kickoff meetings. Imagine the power of going into your sales kickoff meeting already having your goals defined. That would truly be impressive, not just for yourself and your colleagues, but for your management and your leadership team. For many of us, our goals at the beginning of the year are simply handed to us. The goal is your quota. But if you think about it, does that quota actually align to your personal goals? If you hit that quota out of the park, does it actually align to your goals? The things that are most important to you to accomplish in 2019. Are they specific enough, those goals that you have in mind? Your quota is very specific and measurable, right? It's very specific. But when you think about setting your goals, do we have enough meetings with new clients or prospects to identify growth opportunities? Are we having enough interactions with our existing customers to secure our renewals safely? We need these specific goals so that we can make sure they're achievable and they're realistic, and most importantly, they align to your overall personal goals. And they have to be time-bound, or else you risk wasting too much time on a single goal. Let me share with you, if you don't mind, my overall personal goal. So this is my audacious goal. I've set a goal to do a European family excursion by the summer of 2020. We're a family of 6, so you can imagine this is going to be quite a goal. In order to do this, I need to book my travel by Q4 2019, ideally November at the latest. I have a plan that I've already created. I've outlined my specific growth and retention goals over the next several weeks, months, and quarters. And all of these short-term goals roll into my overall personal goal of being able to take my family on a European excursion in 2020. And I have measurements along the way. And I'll go into that in more detail as we go through some of the other techniques. Most time management experts agree that it's really important to write down and share and communicate your goals. The likelihood of achieving your goals increases by 7 times when you do this, according to Harvard Business Review. Now, most of us have already written down our 2019 goals. Either our manager asked us to, or we did it ourselves as part of our New Year's resolution, as Julie made reference to. And that's a good start, writing it down. But now, I encourage you to share it with people that are on your extended team. Beyond just your family and friends, think of the people at work that really support you, that share the drive and passion that you do to be successful. And ask those people for a copy of their goals. Together, you can encourage each other and hold each other accountable. Your Q1 goals, that initial set of goals for this quarter, it should directly link into your longer-term annual goals. You may have it organized in terms of the number of new companies you want to talk to, the number of renewals you need to secure. In order to get to those numbers, you have to back that into your active pipeline and look at your territory data that exists. And then you can start to understand, what are the activities that I need to do to find new people, to get new names, to create, whether it's email, phone, or social media, create the campaigns that I need. By breaking down your Q1 goals, you'll start to identify those key activities that will support you and support your personal goals. And we start to create the master time allocation worksheet. So I have included a copy of a sample worksheet that's available here. And the MTA is really a macro view of how you proactively plan to spend your time. And this is a tool, as I said, when you get these slides, you can download it, it's editable, you can modify it. But in my sample, there's 3 primary categories for all activities. New customers, which I call growth, existing customers, which I would call retention, and non-selling, which I would refer to as internal admin. You want to look at this MTA tool over the course of a week, a month, and a quarter. And the reason you want to do that is because you probably have time-sensitive variables throughout your year. If you have a ton of renewals in March, that's going to drive greater focus on your renewal category and activities in Q1. And you need to plan in Q2 your growth activities so that you can get back on track and be at your annual goal target by the end of the first half. So it's
Tony,
really important. Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, can I interrupt you for 1 second? We have a number of questions on how to download this MTA worksheet. For those of you that are interested in downloading the MTA worksheet, you will find both the example that Tony is talking to right now, as well as a blank template under the handout section of this GoToWebinar control panel. In addition, all of these resources along with the recording will be posted to valueselling.com likely later today or first thing tomorrow morning. So 2 places that you can get it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Appreciate you giving the guidance on that. So, as I was saying, we need to identify those right activities within each category. And when we do that, we drive the outcomes towards our goals. Otherwise, we're just doing busy work all day long, as opposed to productive work aligned to our category, which aligns to our goals. So if you think about it, if you look at my sample sheet, in my growth category, I've got number of opportunities added per week. In my retention category, I've got number of engagement service plans I deliver on a monthly basis. In my internal admin category, I've got my weekly one-on-one meetings with my calendar. So what I suggest, write out your list of activities. Once you've completed that, start assigning them to the categories that you've identified. And remember, an activity can only fit in one category, so don't try to slice and dice it. You're not fooling yourself, right? So step 1, list the activities by the category. Step 2, start estimating the time and block out the time. And step 3, identify the dates. There are specific dates, times, and hours when activities are most purposeful. We're going to talk about that in the next couple of slides, but be sensitive to that as well. In my example, these were the 3 categories that I created. And by defining the right activities per category, you keep yourself focused on the main thing, not everything. And that's really important. So when something comes up and you have to spend more time on keeping up with an existing customer because the CIO departed and you have a renewal, you can switch your time between these categories and get focused as opposed to eliminating everything. How many times have you had a CIO leave from a client and everything falls off the rails and you put all your focus and all your efforts on that one effort of renewing that client and everything else falls to the wayside? We can't do that. By having the categories and activities, we can trade time in between these categories and activities to keep ourselves on track. So we don't want to just jump in and out randomly. We want to stay organized. And by trading activities, we can do that. This keeps your overall balance and it ensures you stay focused on your goals. I have a couple of more examples I'm going to go over in subsequent slides. So let's talk about this master calendar. Everyone has a master calendar. As I was speaking to people to get ready for the webinar, I actually asked people to send me copies of their master calendars. It was quite interesting. But here's the approach that I would encourage you to take. Calendarize your activities by creating color codes for each one of the categories that you're creating and insert your activities accordingly. In my sample, you can see that I've done that. I have 3 categories: growth, retention, internal admin. I've put my goals against each one of them. I've listed a set of activities. And by doing that, when I tally up the percentages of the time, I can see how my time is divided. In the sample, I have 60% of my time allocated to growth, 30% allocated to retention, 10% allocated to internal admin. By looking at this view on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis, I can determine, are my activities in growth, retention, and internal admin actually aligned to the 60-30-10 time allocation or not? Am I cheating myself? Am I moving away from my goal or towards my goal? And do I need to rebalance to achieve my goals? By keeping this master view and looking at it on a regular basis, I make sure I'm focused on the right set of activities over time to drive my outcomes, to make sure I can hold myself accountable to the outcome. This is a great exercise, by the way, to do with your manager. They will have supporting data on the right activities. They will have time allocation that you should plan for. They'll have that data from your CRM tool. They'll have that data for you from your sales ops team. They'll also have great insight on what do top performers do? What activities have you not thought of? What have you missed that top performers do routinely? Your manager will also hold you accountable. Now, I realize for some of us, that may not be great, but imagine if every weekly one-on-one with your manager, you could take a look at this and see, are you in line with your balance? And then it's helpful to have this master calendar. And I know many of you have it, but do you actually determine where will you purposefully dedicate your time and effort on specific days and hours throughout the week, the month, and the quarter? For example, I spoke to account executives, and they told me that in their calendar, they're focused on the number of proposals and the number of demos that must get completed by day 1 to 15 in the month. And I asked them why. Why do you put so much focus in the first half of the month? And they laughed at me and they said, because my closing activities and goals are all blocked between the 16th and 30th day of the month. So they've got activities with goals designed around the month, days, and hours. They know exactly what they need to do when and why it's important from a timing perspective. By blocking out these activities, they've set aside specific times and specific focus, and they get really good at it. If all you're doing is proposals and demos from day 1 to 15, you become a master at it real quickly, as opposed to doing it randomly throughout the month. And by color coding these activities, they keep that balance, that 60-30-10 balance that's in my example, and they know that they're going to have to rebalance it. So one thing that I do, I set aside time, what I call planning time, to actually look at the balance and make any adjustments that I need to make. So make sure you're doing that yourself. It's not a one or done. You don't just do it once and it's done and you pin it up in your home office or in your cubicle and go, oh yeah, I have a pretty master time allocation worksheet. Doesn't that look nice? You got to be honest to it. You got to commit to it and spend some time. Remember, in today's world, there nearly is no wrong time to talk to a prospect. We've got email, phone, social media. We can get to people anytime we want. But we really want to make sure that you identify and protect your prime prospecting hours and prime selling hours. I can't stress that enough. You've got to block out that time and make sure there's no internal admin activities distracting you. This focus makes sure that you're maximizing your success through consistent execution during your prime time. It's easy to just put time in the calendar for prospecting, but the time you pick to do prospecting is really important. It really makes the difference. So be honest with yourself. Pick your prime times where you know they are prime selling hours for you, or prime client engagement hours for you to be meeting. Here's my favorite one, interruptions, right? So interruptions are part of our life. We get phone calls when we don't plan on being called. We have those unread emails that I spoke about that are a distraction, but now we're gonna not be tempted by them. Somebody's always coming by the cubicle and they want to chat with us. Hey, did you see last night's Bachelor? Or did you see the Game of Thrones episode? This is just the reality, right? It's the world we live in. So one of the keys is to start to distinguish the difference between what is urgent and what is important. And because there's so many disruptions that are urgent but not important, you need to distinguish that. Just like there's so many interruptions that are important but that aren't really urgent. So you have to understand how to distinguish between the two and understand where they fit. And if you do this, it allows you to react properly to the situation. Here's a simple exercise for dealing with interruptions. This is what I do. I find it works effectively. I hope you do too, or at least think about trying it. Next time you get a disruption or an interruption, think about writing out that whole list of interruptions that you've had throughout that day that you're dealing with. Highlight the interruptions that are really important. Circle the ones that are urgent. If there's anything on your list that you haven't highlighted or circled, guess what? Take it off your list. It can wait till later. You can deal with it in your internal admin time block that you've already allocated on your master allocation, on your master time allocation. Now, let's look at the things that are really important but not urgent. Was there a deadline given? And can you plan to manage it over time as opposed to immediately? Because it may be important, but it's not urgent. And then let's look at the things that are urgent but not important and apply the same filter. These are the distractions that you probably want to get to right away, and you want to handle them real quickly. And you even make time for them because you feel guilty if you don't. But if we don't use this filter, if we don't ask ourselves these questions, you could make time on things today that really don't need to be done today. Have you ever completed a task for someone only to find out that they didn't need it that day, that they needed it next week? Or that the task was already out of date, that the requirement was actually differently than what they originally gave you, and now they have a different requirement? It happens all the time. But remember, you can proactively set aside time in your internal admin category to manage these situations within your time block. There's no reason for us to freak out and panic when they happen. So, in the poll that we just completed, we realized that distractions take longer than we anticipate to complete. Hey, I'm going to look at that email. It's going to take me 10 minutes. 1 hour later, I'm still working on it, right? How many times did we complete it only to find out it was incomplete? That the person comes back to us and says, hey, you did it wrong, or I needed more information, or hey, that was a great first pass. Can you give me another edit? And we're stuck having to redo it. Now we're reacting. So when you're receiving a task from someone and you want to make sure you're preparing yourself, you have to collect the explicit information. Here's a method that works in handling these distractions because they're not going to go away. But ask these 3 questions to the person who's assigned the task to you. What level of detail do you need? When is it required by? And what format do you need it in? Recap that information in an email and send it back for confirmation. Now you can manage with clear expectations and get it done right, hopefully the first time. The one thing I'd ask you to remember is the majority of the time when people are giving us tasks, they're also distracted. They're also not focused. So it's our responsibility to clarify, confirm, and manage it. If we don't, chances are you're going to have to redo it over and over again. This one I am deeply, deeply passionate about. Sometimes we get so excited about going to a customer meeting. We got that meeting finally secured. We invite the sales manager, we have a pre-sales engineer, we bring a technical person, everyone's there and they're all ready to join us. And we tell the team, hey guys, here's our objective. We're here to build this relationship. We're here to further nurture the relationship. We get demos ready, we've got case studies organized, we've got wonderful presentation slides. But at the end of the meeting, guess what? We don't get the next meeting. We're done. How do we improve our effectiveness? We need to have clear objectives in writing for every single meeting. And you've got to have focused, desired outcomes that justify the next meeting. Objectives also save you time. If you have a clear objective and you go into a client meeting and you accomplish your objective in 30 minutes of the 1 hour meeting, you can now respectfully pack up, leave, get your next meeting, give the customer back 30 minutes because your objective was met. That's the power of having objectives and being organized around it and being fixated on it. When you don't have objectives, 1 hour later, we're just here to keep this relationship going, no next meeting. It's really important to share those objectives with your team as well. If you're going to bring other members of your team in front of a client, make sure they understand the objective. Ask them what they can bring to the table to help you meet that objective, right? Use a simple checklist with your internal team. Here's the objective we want to accomplish, guys. What approach do you propose we take? Should we ask a series of questions? Should we present some slides? Maybe a testimonial, maybe a case study? Should someone from the team talk about the last installation and deployment that was successful? Whatever it is, gain agreement so that you've got a plan on your objectives as a team going into the meeting. By having these objectives, you're prepared and you have a purposeful agenda that you share with your client. And don't kid yourself. Buyers notice when you come in and you're organized and have clear objectives. The interaction is very different as you continue your qualification process. If you don't have an objective, you shouldn't be meeting with that person. It's as simple as that. You're basically wasting time, right? The next component is making sure that we're effective with our clients. And the clients are the ones where we have opportunities that are truly winnable. Top performing reps, whether you're inside sales or outside sales, they know I have to continuously and consistently requalify my prospects all the time. Listen, we live in a transformative era. Transformation and change is constant, which means the factors that you identified to qualify that prospect change the minute you leave the door. That's just the real world that we're in. And we need to be mapped to the customer's buying journey, not just looking at our sales process checklist and checking off, yep, I did that, yep, I did that, yep, I did that. That doesn't guarantee you anything. Our value selling framework, which is the one that we use and that many of you use on the line and many of our customers use globally in various industries, allows us to effectively and consistently qualify prospects so we stop wasting time with what I call the happiest prospects in the world. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure all of us can identify some of the happiest prospects in the world. We want to chase real opportunities that are winnable. The goal is to control effectively the requalification of our prospects. So if we do that, we can actually accelerate our high potential opportunities and eliminate the low potential ones. Listen, we all know, and you probably have them right now in your pipeline. You have the prospect that's willing to meet with you over and over again. They've met with you for the last couple of months, the last couple of quarters, but your sales phase is stuck. You haven't progressed. You're exactly where you were when you first met that prospect months or quarters ago. I want to share with you a little bit about the dimensions of qualification. Because really, this is the buyer's journey. And the typical buyer journey is a very similar process to that of a sales professional, which is a business case that needs to be made. Anytime you're going to introduce change, you need to justify it. We as sales professionals need to understand this and speak to it in our own sales conversations. Think of it this way. I'll give you a scenario. Let's imagine I'm the CEO of a busy media sales team. I've got 20 people on staff, and we have really hard targets every quarter. And the team, they need to use the leads that are generated from our online and marketing to get the job done. And they follow up on leads and they qualify them quickly, and they do most of it over the phone. My business issue is, how am I going to achieve my revenue targets each quarter over the fiscal year? But I have all these problems, these challenges that are getting in the way. I've got turnover of sales. I don't have a real formal sales onboarding, and I'm not really training my tenured reps much, and the competition keeps getting tougher. I know what the best solution is. I got to get better training for my people, right? I have a vision of that solution. It's very clear to me. Now I need to demonstrate that to people above me, people who are really the power. And I need to show them what the business value is, that they will see if we can solve these problems and business issue. We're going to get more consistent revenue, obviously. We're going to increase our overall market share, and we'll have overall revenue growth. I know in my organization who I need to get on board and the timelines. It's basically a plan that I've got, right? So at Value Selling, we recognize that this is a process that sales conversations and buying journeys are on in parallel. We ensure that at each stage, we're confirming what would solve the business issue for that buyer. And we know it's important because the buyer keeps asking themselves, is this solution going to address my top priority or not? So it's really important that we stay focused on this qualifying. Let's start to recap now. So let's summarize the 6 techniques we discussed. The first technique we talked about is goal setting. Once you've got it in writing and you've communicated it and you're sharing your personal annual goals, you're on the journey. We need very specific short-term goals. They must be achievable, realistic, and aligned to your overall personal goals. They need to be time-bound, or else you risk wasting time on single activities and single goals. Then we're going to categorize these activities that we collect from our goal setting, and we're going to take these activities, put them into the categories, and have our master time allocation worksheet. The worksheet is going to keep you honest throughout the year. You're going to track where you are, and is your focus on executing activities that directly align to your goals. And you're going to remember that this is a great tool to share with your manager for their input and guidance. Also remember, there's nothing wrong with rebalancing. That's part of the reason why you track and plan time to review it. So rebalancing often is not a bad thing, as long as you're in control. You're rebalancing proactively, not reactively. Now, I can calendar all these activities. I've got my unique color codes. I can start to block out time and make sure that I minimize disruptions. I can also now look at my weekly, monthly, and quarterly view of my calendar and make sure that the activities are on track, as I said. This keeps me focused. This keeps me focused on my outcomes. Now, we talked about handling distractions and how it usually takes longer than we thought to complete them. So when we're receiving the tasks, we want to make sure we ask, hey, what level of detail do you need? When is it required by? And what format do you need? You're going to recap that in an email. You're going to ask for confirmation, and then you can manage your time accordingly because you've already got it allocated in your internal admin. You're on top of it. We discussed the need for clear objectives in writing for every single meeting. Having focused outcomes to secure the meeting, really important. We need to share our objective with our team so everyone has a clear expectation on the roles in front of the client. Remember, if you don't have an objective, you shouldn't be meeting with that person. Don't waste your time or theirs. Finally, one of the biggest time wasters that we have spent way too much time on is with people who are always willing to meet us, but will never buy from us. And we all know people in our pipeline who fit that description. Qualifying and consistently requalifying opportunities ensures you invest your time in the most highly qualified opportunities in your pipeline. Improve your odds, improve your chances by requalifying. But remember, transformation is upon us. We live in a period of constant change. So, technology is going to change, industry will change, mergers and acquisitions will happen, there will be organizational restructuring, but we always need to be prepared to requalify because that's the new reality.